And basically athletes, if they are, for example, going for a long distance, middle distance run, they use the phase change to cool, take their body temperature a little bit down that they can perform better, but
Yes.
not to freeze their back muscles that their biomechanics and
Yes.
performance gets affected. Okay, so ice packs are a little bit not maybe beneficial. PCM has its own use cases, and you are using the evaporative method. Could you tell more? How do you use it? How does it work? What are the advantages? How does it work, like physiologically? How much the temperature changes, and so on?
So what we developed is different kind of vest. In that case, it's a shoulder pad, and it's a semi-permeable membrane. So when you want to use evaporative method, you have different options. For example, you can use a sponge, a super absorbing sponge, which has to be winded out before using it, but still keeps the water quite well and release it slowly. So there are several methods in that. The disadvantage in that it's that sometimes it's not that easy to get rid of the water, so you will be still wet. Or you can use a wet cloth. Obviously, there you also get wet. Or you can use semi-permeable membranes like we are using it, where the water is actually encapsulated and will be released very slowly through the semi-permeable membranes. And the way to activate it, it's quite simple. In that case, we have a valve system here with Velcro, and then you take the water bottle, you put it around, and then you kind of fill it. And after a while, it will have enough water. Mostly it's one PET bottle. And then you close it, and then you see that already there, the water is encapsulated.
Yeah.
And slowly it will releases the water steam through the semi-permeable membrane, and it cools down the body 3 to 5 degrees. In that case, it's not the core temperature, but it's the skin temperature. So, but the 3 to 5 degrees, depending on the circumstance, for example, when there is dry air, so the cooling is even stronger, it already gives a very good effect, especially for people who suffer of heat and who have sometimes also conditions that they cannot tolerate a lot of heat.
Yeah, and you said that you have a vest and you have a shoulder pad, so you have two designs that can be
Currently,
used.
yes.
Yeah.
And what we are also using now in the testing phase for women in the menopause or women with artificial menopause. Artificial means because maybe they have breast cancer and they receive some medication that it creates a menopause in order to reduce the possibility to get cancer again. We're having some pads, like some shoulder pads, some pads for the leg, some pads for the arm. We are currently testing them.
Yeah, interesting. And it's basically releasing the water from the outer surface of the vest, not on the inside, right?
Right. It does release also a little bit of water in the inside because we have the semi-permeable membranes to both sides, since the cooling effect will be stronger then.
Yeah.
But mostly to the drier part.
Yeah.
So the cooling effect outside is stronger, so the evaporation, because it works about partial pressure and it goes there where there is less humidity.
Yeah. And
yes, less barrier.
Yeah. And when you wear it, would you wear it on, for example, a t-shirt or under the t-shirt? Does it make a difference?
Yes. So some people, they like to wear it directly on the skin. We don't recommend to put a t-shirt on top because it would basically create an additional barrier where the evaporation has to happen. So our recommendation is over the t-shirt.
Yeah.
That's what the construction workers do, which are using our solution, or also, for example, the people with paraplegia.
Yeah. And basically you put like one bottle of half a liter of water, and I think that was the shoulder pad. If you have the vest, how much do you put water and how slowly it evaporates in different conditions, different humidity?
Yeah. So the shoulder pad is mostly a PET bottle of 33 centiliters, which is enough. And the half a liter counts for the vest.
Yeah.
Sometimes it can be also 6 centiliters and a bit more. But from the conditions, we excessively tested it at EMPA. EMPA is like a research lab here in Switzerland. And we are also an EMPA spin-off. And what we used was a machine or a robot which creates heat. And we put on different vests on the robot. And the robot has to maintain a certain temperature and therefore it uses energy. And based on the energy it uses, you can calculate the effect of the cooling solution. And in that case, the tests were done with 35 degrees of room temperature, and the humidity was around 40 to 50%.
Yes.
And it lasts up to 5 hours, has a good cooling effect over 400 watt per square meters, which is considered as a noticeable cooling effect. And that is comparable, for example, to the sponge solution of competitors. They only last up to 45 minutes.
Yeah.
And after that, they reduce strongly and you can use them up to 2 hours, but not up to 5 hours like ours. And the way to reactivate it is just to fill up additional water. The reason why the cooling effect went down is because the water up here evaporated, and then you just have to refill it.
Yeah. And basically it's a little bit over half a kilo the vest, so it's not a big difference in kind of performance. In athletes, it probably would count in a way that you might not want to have the extra weight, but if you're a construction worker or not competing, you probably benefit more from the cooling effect than from the extra weight.
Yes. And in construction work, there are also a lot of different works. So one of the main use cases our vest is used is mostly construction work, where they are, for example, putting glass fibers together, where they are like for a while more still.
Yeah.
And if you have too much physical activity, every cooling vest would not reach the power of cooling you need, actually, because by physical activity, the body would actually increase the heat in order to sweat more and to cool down the body again. And whenever you have an additional cooling solution, it can have the counter effect then. Okay. So it really depends on the use case where you're using these cooling solutions.
So would you say there's certain threshold, like for example, if you, let's say you walk in the desert, it cools you, but if you would run, it wouldn't work anymore? Or...
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
So if you run maybe for 10 minutes or 20 minutes, it should be fine. There was also the feedback from the construction workers, which we tested with EMPA again, with this research lab together. But if you're like 2 hours physically work nonstop, then there's a point where it can be counterproductive.